Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. We're about to get this show on the road. We're going to be talking about preventive maintenance on transmissions. Let me share some information. If this is your first time joining us, we're going to be talking maintenance today. Got Jamie in the house from Pensacola, Ohio. Jerome, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. Later on, we're going to do a Q&A, so if you have questions or comments, if you want to hit us up on Super Chat, make sure you hit us up. Also, if you'd like to share what type of intervals you're running, let me know. Chicago's in the house. What's going on, Jerry? I hope everyone had a good New Year's. I know it was pretty quick, but this phrase got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. Got to keep moving, America. Let me know how I sound, man. Make sure I have my sound check. Do I got an echo? See if I can get a sound check. Jerry from Chicago's in the house. Greensboro, North Carolina. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Mobile, Alabama. Good old Cajun food down there. I was stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi for 1 year when I was in the military. Thank you, Jamie. All right, let's get this show on the road. Switch over to this screen here. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Today we're going to be talking about preventive maintenance on your transmission. If this is your first time joining us, I'm Adam with TAT Express. I am ASC certified in medium and heavy duty diesel, and today we're going to be talking about preventive maintenance on transmissions. I'm going to be talking about daily checks, 5,000 mile checks, 10,000 mile checks, 20,000 mile checks, all the way up to 100,000 to 200,000 mile checks. If you have a 18-wheeler or you're a driver, this information is going to be packed. Or if you're also a technician, someone servicing these equipment, this information is going to be useful for you as well. Sounds like I'm coming down with a cold. No, I'm good. I'm good. Appreciate it. I've always had nasal vocals, I guess you would say. But I appreciate you checking up on me, man. So today, I do hear an echo. Let me see if I can fix that real quick. I think I'm monitoring too much audio coming in. Test. Can you hear me all right there? Test. Might be turning the audio off there. Test. All right. Don't want to mess. I shouldn't have messed with the audio, but you guys should be able to hear me fine. If you don't, let me know. I get an echo in here. Anyway, I'm going to be sharing something with you here. Let's go to this next screen here. This is basically an online manual for a transmission. You're going to be your manual transmission that are based out, basically a 10 speed, 13 all the way up to a 13 speed. So as you can see here at the beginning, every 40,000 miles, you're going to inspect the clutch. Inspect should be made according to manufacturer specs. If you have a clutch that you're able to check, most of the time as a technician, we're going to check it through the window, and the window through the flywheel housing, or the bell housing. It's the bell housing on the transmission. And give me a second. I still hear this echo. Let me see if I can turn that echo off. And you guys, all right, there we go. No more echo. Okay, so 40,000 miles, we're going to be checking the clutch. And what I was basically wanted to mention is when you're checking this out on your transmission, you're checking out your clutch and the condition of your clutch. Most of the time you're going to be checking out through the bell housing. The bell housing is going to be different ways you could check clutches depending on what type of clutch you have. Most of the time the new modern trucks are going to have a automatic self-adjusting clutch, so you're going to be able to just tell by a well indicator on there. So we're not going to be talking too much about clutches, but every 40,000 miles you should get this checked out. If you're running if you're running quite a bit of miles, getting that clutch checked out. And this is not saying you're gonna need to replace it. This is basically saying just to get it checked out. Release bearings, remove handhold cover to check. There's a cover so you can actually see where the release bearing is. A lot of times you're just gonna have grease lines coming out of the throwout bearing. And sometimes if it's ever been replaced, or even if it's not been replaced and you have originals, that grease line can become brittle, or it can just become loose, and it's not going to be able to grease that bearing. So and it's sitting outside of a cover, so that's why it's saying remove that cover and physically inspect the throwout bearing to ensure that it's getting grease, because greasing the throwout bearing is very important. You have a premature clutch failure if you're not doing these type of steps. Jerry, yeah, this is covering of Eaton Fuller 18 speed as well. What's good about these manuals, I can show you later on, is that it covers a wide range of transmissions. So related position, thrust surface, and release bearing and thrust sleeve. So if you have, most trucks are going to have either release bearing, those type of things are going to let that shaft, whenever you push that clutch in, it's going to push that brake, that release bearing is going to push up against a stop brake to kind of stop that shaft so you can go into the gear at a stop. Most of the time you're going to be able to float the gears. That's what they're designed for. I had somebody in my chat bring up about floating gears, and what was floating gears something good. Now, floating gears, they are designed to float gears, these transmissions, and I'm going to show you in another video, which I can show you here in like this first video right here. I'm going to walk you through how these transmission goes through these gears here. But these particular transmissions are made to slide through clutches, so you don't have to double clutch. If you guys are double clutching, you're gonna be wearing that clutch out more. And there are mostly those grease lines, had a comment pop up, but most of these grease lines are very, I would say, they don't last very long, because just of the road grime, and they become brittle. All right, I got your comments up here. Just had a comment, said my grease lines are no good for my 10 speed. It's been like that for a year now. Gonna have to get them replaced. If not, that you're gonna end up having premature wear on that clutch. Every 5,000 miles, it's saying to change your transmission lubricant. Okay, this is from initial refill when it was sold to you. Okay, initial fill or new sold units be changed at 5,000, especially if they've been sitting down. Now we're gonna get down to the daily, the 5,000, 10,000, and this was pretty surprising for me as well, on the amount of intervals that the transmission has. Now, and it makes perfect sense, because if you think about how much of a beating a transmission goes through to be able to harness all this torque coming from this engine, you have a high combustion engine that's producing this torque right off the flywheel, just creating monster torque right off the flywheel. So these transmissions take a beating. Some of the shorts that I shared is going to come in line with some of these PMs and some of these daily maintenance recommendations that we're going to be going over. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the daily. Daily is talking about bleeding your air tanks and listening for leaks. And okay, so one of the shorts that I had shared showed a slave cylinder. If you're running a transmission that's a basic 10 speed, You basically have 5 gears in with the auxiliary box. With the auxiliary box, if I show you this picture here, this back section of the auxiliary box, you basically have the same first 5 gears, and then the auxiliary box allows you to use the same 5 gears again, but at a higher output, so you actually have a 10 speed. And some of them add a couple extra gears in this auxiliary box so that you can have that 13 speed. But right here, what he's showing, he's kind of sliding through the clutches. These are called sliding clutches. Now, when we're replacing the oil in the transmission, we're looking for glitter, a lot of wear, and excessive play. Right now is what he's doing, is putting these in gear, inspecting these sliding clutches here, the ones that actually go inside the gear like so. Those right there, or if they have, they're going to have sharp edges. Let me kind of slow it down a little bit if I could. And right here. I just slow it down a little bit. So right here's the auxiliary box. This is mostly where you're gonna have a lot of your wear. This transmission has 2 counter shafts. You got 2 counter shafts and 1 center main shaft. So there's 3 shafts in this transmission to be able to just handle all this torque coming from this engine. Okay, so you got a counter shaft and another counter shaft on this side, and you have your main shaft. So these all work together so that it's able to capture that all that torque coming out of there. So back to the maintenance. So changing out the air, the reason why I went to that is changing out this airlines, or changing out your air tanks, bleeding out your air tanks, and make sure that you're keeping up with your air maintenance is very important. This is just draining your air. I would do it daily. I know sometimes I was recommending later than that, but here is saying daily because you don't want condensation to build up in those air valves, because those air valves is what disengage this rear section of the box to go in and out. There's a gear. It's that just basically uses this air solenoid to engage it in and out. So, and there's different setups. You have a switch on the side, and you have control modules up top that are controlled by air. Even the automated systems are also controlled by air. So it's very important to bleed your air daily. Inspect for oil leaks. This is something that you should be kind of doing during your pre-inspection. If you're about to get on the road and you just got done putting fuel and you see oil around on the ground, that's definitely it's going to be an indicator that you have something going on. Something definitely you need to look at. Check oil level. Now, check oil level every 10,000. I know that it's probably going to be challenging. If you're not seeing oil on the ground from when you park at a long period of time, you may be all right not checking the oil. But if you do notice that you have oil and you need to check it, then I would get down there and check it. There is a section here. It's under lubrication. Let me just show you right quick. And I talked about this the other day. Now, these manuals are free. They're online. Now, this is the proper way of checking your oil. Okay, so if you have to, this is a finger on the side. This is going to be the side section where you're going to be filling the oil at. Now, if you have to stick your finger in there, it's basically not going to have enough oil in there, and it wants it enough where it's right on the edge of that feeler here. And the reason why is whenever these transmissions are rotating like this, that oil level is so low that it carries that oil all the way up to these teeth. Right now this transmission is dry, but it carries that oil all up to the teeth, and that's what helps it stay lubricated, and it's already running low. So if you run it even lower, it's very dangerous for that. We're going to get to oil next. So here I want to stay on maintenance. So at 10,000 miles, we're checking oil. Even at 20,000 miles, we're checking oil. So that's basically going to be around every PM you need to be checking your oil, because this goes on all the way till 60, all the way up to 100,000 miles. You need to be checking your oil. Inspect air system connections every 20,000 miles, 40,000. So every 20,000 miles, inspect air system connections. So as I mentioned before, most of these transmissions are running off air solenoids. So if you're running a 10 speed, 13 speed, and you have the switch on your handle, that's an indicator that you're running solenoids, air solenoids. So inspecting your air components to make sure you don't have any leaks every 20,000, 40,000 miles is going to ensure that you can actually get those repaired in a timely manner. Because if you saw some of the shorts that I shared earlier, if you saw some of the shorts, if you haven't been following me on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Share our information. If you have anybody that's in the trucking industry, make sure to hit the comments. Hit us up in the comment section. Hit us up in the chat. Appreciate everybody that's joining us. I'm going to be answering questions later on. If you are needing service in the DFW area, give us a call at 972-225-3017. We're located at 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas 75241. That's cruising through Bonneview, if you're Bonneview and Interstate 20. Okay, so it's crucial to inspect your air system components every 20,000, 40,000, 70,000, basically every 20,000 miles. We talked about checking your clutch housing. Okay, so this one's a different one. Checking your clutch housing cap screws at 20,000, 40,000. So this is basically somebody that's going to need to be going down there, and you can use a torque wrench to torque down to ensure that none of them are getting loose. Because as I mentioned before, with these transmissions, with the transmissions taking such a beating over time, that the torque from the engine transferring over to a transmission, over time it can get loose. So it's very good practice that even Eaton puts it in here in their maintenance recommendations, that you're needing to actually check the clutch housing cap screws to see if they're loosened. And this is not only every 20,000 miles, it's saying every 20,000, okay, next time 40,000, 60,000, 80,000. So depending on how many miles you're running a year, if you're running say for example you're running 100,000 miles a year, that would be needing to check, recommended to check. Let me see here. Recommended to check 5 times a year. How many of us are actually checking our clutch housing cap screws for loosening every 5 times a year? Nobody is. So this is PM recommendations from Fuller, manufacturers of the transmissions that are on our trucks. Preventive maintenance recommendations. So that's a big one here. Let me go back and share it with you. It's a big one here. So lube clutch pedal shafts, we've already talked about that one. There's different. If you're running a modern truck, you may need to lube if you have a manual clutch lever. Most of if this is what this is talking about, most of the modern trucks are running hydraulic. And what I mean by that is there's a fork that grabs that throwout bearing that I was talking about earlier. That throwout bearing is what's going to be grabbing the clutch. So the older trucks are going to have a rod that you have to adjust with screws. The most modern trucks are going to be running hydraulic. So this is why it's important to run, if you are running a hydraulic clutch setup, that you need to be running a self-adjusting clutch, because with the hydraulics, when a self-adjusting clutch or a manual adjusting clutch starts to wear, the clutch housing gets a little bit closer, the throwout bearing gets a little bit closer to the clutch housing. Now with a manual adjustment, you're able to feel the clutch play and make the adjustments. with a hydraulic clutch pedal setup, you're not going to be able to feel that. So it's good practice to always run an automated self-adjusting clutch on a hydraulic system. So if you get them mixed up, you can definitely cause some problems or have a premature fail clutch on that. That's just something I wanted to mention to you guys. So back over to check remote control linkage. We already talked about this linkage. Clean air, replace air filter element. If you have an air dryer, this is telling you to replace it every 20,000. If you have an air filter element on the transmission, some of the automatics have also filtration. It's really important to keep our air dry, and you can see it here that it's showing it's basically repeating air inspection system connections at 20,000. Now we're having air filter elements inspected as well. We're also checking for output shaft for loosening every 20,000 miles. So these are items that you can check on a drive line whenever you go in for your PMs. This is stuff that we check for when you come in for a PM with us. So if you rest assured and you're looking for a shop that needs this type of PM, be sure to check us out. Check clutch operation and adjustments. Now, this is what I was just mentioning about the self-adjusting and the manual adjusting. If you're asking where you can find a manual adjusting clutch, or where can you find what manuals? The manuals that I'm on. So your transmission, I'll go to that here in a second. Your transmission has a plate. There's going to be a name plate on the side of it, on the bottom side of it. So that name plate is what's going to tell you the manufacturer of that transmission and the model. And most of this literature you can find just online. And you may have to just search for it. But Chewbacca 84. All right, so 5,000 miles is telling you to change your oil, it's just sooner than I thought, but this is right after manufacture, basically. That's why it says a star by it. It says initial fill on new units. See lubrication section. Repeat schedule after 100,000 miles. So it's telling you to replace it once a year. Repeat schedule 100,000 miles. How many guys are changing their transmission once a year? Now, even if you feel like this is like a sales scheme or whatnot, what I would ask you to do, if you feel like this is some sort of sales scheme, is do an oil analysis on your transmission just to see if there's any kind of metals or anything irregular, which there are places that can do that. Because over time, if you look at this video here where he's sliding the clutches in over time, they don't slide in when this shaft is still. They're sliding in whenever this is rotating. So over time they're clanging and they do wear over time, and it's normal wear. Sliding clutches are normal wear. What's not normal wear is if you have a transmission that completely loses all its oil and it ends up burning, your top gear when you're rolling down the highway, which is with that is definitely. I just noticed that my logo looks backwards. Shout out to everybody that joined us this evening. Appreciate everybody that's on live. I had a broadcast. Happy New Year's if everyone's following their calendar. Happy New Year. Hope you had a solid week. If you're looking for service on your transmission, you can call us at 972-225-3017, or you can visit our website and hit up contact us to schedule an appointment. I hope you guys enjoy these types of live. I'm going to be doing some Q&A. If you got any questions about your trucks, hit me up on Super Chat. We already talked about changing the oils. We already talked about what these sliding clutches are doing here. That's basically when we have to drop the transmission like this. This is an automated truck. So what that means is the top part of the truck is automated. So we're physically having to ensure everything's working correctly. Everything looked good on this particular truck. So when we put it back together, I believe it was an XY shifter, but most of the boxes are made this way. So they changed the tops and they changed the rears, but most of the boxes are made this way. They're basic boxes just like this. 2 counter shafts and a main shaft. And they use the auxiliary box, which is the back of the box, to create a higher output. And they use those, they can add an extra gear on the rear to create that. And as I mentioned, they're using air solenoids. Your shifter tower mounts on top of all this, and it helps guide those forks into those. So your air solenoids most of the time are not the ones putting those into gear. It's your shifter knob. Your shifter knob, and I can show you. Let me see if I can find. Let me see if I can find some info for you. Shout out to everybody that's joined us this evening. But yeah, your shifter knob bolts to an assembly, and it's got a bunch of teeth on it. It's really heavy, and that shifter assembly a lot of times is being replaced by automated solenoids, where they're energized by electricity or they're energized by air, and those solenoids is what is creating the shift. But it's the same concept, it's the same transmission, it's the same box. What's changing as well is the way that as I mentioned, the actuators, or not the actuators, but the clutch forks. Now those clutch forks are automated, so they're using air solenoids to But yeah, they use that air solenoids to actually activate and deactivate the clutch. So that's how they're making automated systems. They're not automated. They're not automatic. They don't have torque converters and stuff like that, like a true automatic clutch. So I don't see. There was another manual that I found, but I didn't want to open it up all the way because it was pretty extensive. It's not opening up. That one it gave a breakdown of how much goes just below that shifter tower. There's a lot of components that go. Doesn't look like it's opening. Did I lose you guys on the stream? Well, I hope I didn't lose you guys on the stream. Something froze up on me. Test. I moved over to this screen because it looks like this other screen kind of froze up on me. But it looks like I'm still live. I have another dock that looked like it's froze up. But we covered a lot of maintenance, at least on what I wanted to talk about with all the intervals here. One thing I didn't get to mention was the oils here. Let's move over to these oils. Looks like we still got a solid connection. Where do you find the manuals? I usually, as I mentioned, I looked them up online, and you can check the model number for your transmission, and that model number will help you. So we got transmission fluid. 50 weight is basically what they're recommending, is 50 weight. You can go synthetic, or let me share here. They got 50 weight, SAE 50 weight. Here's your heavy duty oil applications, CPA. These are all oil classifications. And they also approve 90-80 weight as well. Now, if you look up here, it says transmission from the initial use at heavy duty. It says 5,000 miles. So right after you use it from the factory, 5,000 miles. Every 10,000 miles after that, heavy duty highway change is 250,000 miles. Mid-range highway change interval is 100,000 miles. Off-highway use, factory fill, 30,000. Inspection, 40,000. Change transmission fluid every 500 hours. Change transmission 1,000. Heavy duty engine lubricant. This is really where we're going to be falling in place, is the heavy duty highway. It's 250,000. So that's saying every 2 years. That's every 2 years. If you can't do it every year, at least do an oil analysis, and don't forget the differentials as well. These type of treatments are pretty much the same. The differentials go through a lot of wear as well. They go through a lot of wear and tear as well. Appreciate everybody. That's what we got on the comments here. I have a screen over here that froze up on me, and that's mostly where I have most of my controls. But I appreciate everybody that's joining this evening. I covered most of what we need to be looking for on transmissions. A lot of these transmissions get overlooked, and what I notice is on the highway, once they actually lose all their oil, man, they burn up. They're done. There's not really saving them at all. They get burned up pretty quickly. So if you've had a transmission fail on you, you could definitely kind of get where we're coming from. And this is, no one wants to be seen or have a transmission go down on them. Is the music loud? I don't hear it. Yeah. Boom. All right. Yeah, you know what? I was playing the music back on my headset, and for this reason, I had it on here. I didn't hear it that well. Was it that loud that whole time? Were y'all able to catch any of that information? Or might have to reshoot this? It says, why is my automatic transmission gears grind when downshifting from 7 to 6? What kind of grinding is it? Is it like a long period grind, or is it just a short, like a short shift when it gets into that gear? What type of grind is it? If it's grinding, that means those sliding clutches that I'm talking about right here, the ones that are next to me, those could be getting worn. So that's why they're not able to make it into that gear. Thanks for letting me know about that music. I was trying some new stuff on this platform, and I guess I put the music too loud. Thanks for letting me know. I couldn't get the playback on my headset. But yeah, that could be the problem. Depending on what the mileage is on your transmission. If you have high mileage, say for example you have 500,000 miles on your truck, that could be an indication that the transmission could be having some problems. But what I would recommend is, if you haven't had an oil change in that transmission in a long time, as I mentioned, they're recommending every 250,000 miles. So if it's not getting done around that interval, I would get it changed. And when you change it, you can kind of inspect it to see if you have any kind of metallic. If there's any kind of metallic, that would be an indication that you have some wear in that transmission. A lot of times we could drop the PTO, like this transmission, the PTO was dropped, but the steps had us move over to the top part because it's an automated system as well. So we wanted to make sure nothing was getting jammed or stuck, and it was causing it not to go in gear before condemning the top control. But definitely could have some issues going on there. But yeah, Chewbacca, hope those manuals. It says my grease lines are no good on my 10-speed. It's been like that for a year now. Get it replaced before you have to replace the clutch. That's not an easy fix. A clutch is basically it's a lot of work, man. You're having to remove the drive shaft, remove the transmission, and it's what I'm saying that it's handling all this torque coming off of this 4,000-pound engine. So that transmission's a monster. It's like 800 pounds. So it's 800 pounds of just metal that's bolted to the back of this engine that has to be broke loose. So once that's taken off, you have to put that transmission, the flywheel, remove the flywheel, put new rear main seals. There's a lot of companies that won't put a new rear main seal. I don't know why these rear main seals are made like paper, but most of these modern engines, I see these main seals, they are very bad. They're very bad. So definitely get that rear main seal replaced. So anytime you put a new clutch on there, what happens is, and the reason why we always recommend clutches is because what happens is if you put a new clutch on there, that clutch is going to have a larger gripping force or harder gripping force. So it's going to end up turning the back of that engine and flexing that flywheel, that seal, and that will end up causing you to have leaks. So if you try to skip out and no, I don't need that rear main seal, it's not leaking, leave it alone. If you ended up not replacing it and it starts to leak, that's because that clutch started grabbing it a lot better. So that's causes that problem to happen. So definitely replace that rear main seal if you're doing any type of work. Appreciate everybody that's joined us. Thanks again. If anybody's got any information that'd like to share with us, you can leave it in the comments. Sorry about the music. Was trying some new stuff this evening. I will be posting some more information today. We were just talking about transmission maintenance, what you needed to know, changing your oil, what types of oil. If you were able to pull any information from this broadcast, that's what we did it for. If you're in the DFW area, you can give us a shout, 972-225-3017, or I'll put a link in where you can actually schedule an appointment online. Thanks for joining us. Be safe out there, and we'll see you again. Thanks.